I get asked very often, what are the most important characteristics of leadership? Vision, charisma. I know plenty of incredible leaders that aren't big Steve Jobs visionaries. They're just not. And I know some fantastic leaders who do not have charisma. They're quiet and super introverted, and they're just not that exciting to talk to, spend time with. When I say charisma, I mean the traditional definition of it, which is more about energy. I believe charisma is undying belief in something, and that they have in spades. But I think courage is the one thing that all great leaders have to have, because we are surrounded by overwhelming forces every day of our lives pushing us to play the finite game. If you're a public company, the markets, all they want for their own selfish gain is for you to make short-term decisions. The pressures are overwhelming. If you're a numbers-driven person, the pressures are overwhelming. If you're in survival mode, the pressures are overwhelming. If you have a spouse who spends more money than you can make, the pressures are overwhelming. All the pressures around us, even the way we treat competition versus rivalry, like we feel like we have to win all the time. The pressures every day on us are absolutely overwhelming for us to be finite and to prioritize the short term over the long term, to prioritize the urgent over the important. And it takes unbelievable courage to put the important before the urgent. It takes unbelievable courage to resist all the pressures coming from selfish outside parties. It takes unbelievable pressure to do the right thing.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Simon Sinek, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, keep your vision big.
How can we ensure that we're changing with times, technology, culture, politics, and tastes, rather than just trying to beat our competitor? And you see it across industries. Publishing, for example. The internet showed up and they saw it and they thought it was nice. And they, as it took on, they sort of, I guess they were interested in it. They sort of played defense. And then Amazon showed up and Amazon went to all of them and said, hey, you want to invest in us? And they all said no. Well, now they're all playing catch up. They're all playing defense. Netflix went to Blockbuster and said, want to buy us? And Blockbuster said no. The rest of the TV and movie industry were too busy comparing who had higher ratings, and they completely missed the fact that Netflix has now completely reinvented television. I find that fascinating. General Motors was destroying its own electric vehicles to protect its old business, and now they're all rushing to catch up with Tesla. I think this is hilarious. And it's the little companies, the Netflixes, the Amazons, the Teslas, that get ignored, that aren't seen as a threat, that end up defining and redefining entire marketplaces. Now, this is not unique to small companies. Big companies can absolutely redefine. The problem is big companies are more obsessed with their finite goals. Big companies are more obsessed with beating their competitors. And little companies are obsessed with their vision. Little companies are obsessed with this outsized vision that outstrips the resources they have, right? Somebody says, we're going to do this, and everybody looks around and goes, well, we don't have the money for that. We don't have the talent for that. I guess we'll have to be creative. And I think this is one of the opportunities for big companies. As they get big, their visions get smaller. They become goals that they can just do a back plan for. There's nothing inherent that a big company shouldn't be innovative. But to your point before, they become risk averse. They become stable. And at the end of the day, it takes huge vision. What I imagine is a huge corporation, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, that someone will say, we imagine a world that's so crazy and so idealistic that in this large corporation, they all look around and go, we don't have the money for that. We don't have the talent for that. I guess we'll have to be creative, which scares the heck out of the investor community. But remember, all of those companies were founded by, whether it's your Steve Jobs or all of these companies, Salesforce, they all started by young people who had no experience and only had vision. And I think there's no reason why big companies cannot be innovative. But I think it's about pushing their own boundaries and allowing for entrepreneurship. And inherent in entrepreneurship is failure. You can't experiment without failing. I remember talking to a CFO of a big company once, and he told me that he has two priorities for the company, innovation and efficiency. I said, good luck with that. There's nothing efficient about innovation because you have to keep trying something over and over again. There's nothing efficient about that. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, companies are obsessed with growth. And everybody, they brag, we're a hyper-growth company. Show me one article, not 10, not 15, show me one article that shows any data that hyper-growth is good for business and good for the company. There is no data to show that companies who are obsessed with growth actually build stronger companies, because they don't. And so it is a fool's errand that is promoted usually by an incentive structure that rewards short-term benefits. I think what companies can do is start to look at their incentive structures and start rewarding things like teamwork, ethics, and long-term gain. And guess what? You'll get the behavior you reward.
Rule number 3, find your why.
Find a friend you love. And one of those people who, if you called them at 3 o'clock in the morning, they'd take your call and you would take theirs. Don't do this with a spouse. Don't do this with a sibling. Don't do this with a boyfriend or girlfriend. Those relationships are too close. But find a best friend and ask them this simple question: why are we friends? And they're going to look at you like you're crazy, because it's very hard for the human brain to put our feelings into words, because the part of the brain that controls our feelings doesn't control language. This is why we use metaphors and analogies and why we struggle to tell people how we actually feel. It's because it's a different part of the brain. And so they're going to look at you and be like, I don't know. Why are you asking me this? And you say, come on, I know you've been there for me my whole life. And then you actually stop asking the question why, ironically. You actually ask the question what. You say, come on, what specifically is it about me that I know you'd be there for me no matter what? And they're going to hem and haw because it's hard to put into words. Don't help them. Don't let anybody else help them. And they're going to start describing you. I don't know. You're funny. You're smart. You're honest. You've always been there for me. You go, good. You play devil's advocate. Good. That's the definition of a friend. What specifically is about me that I'd know you'd be there for me no matter what? And again, they'll hem and haw, and some will get through this quickly, and some will get through it slowly, and it'll be a struggle, and you have to continue to play devil's advocate. Good, that's the definition of a close friend. What specifically is about me? And eventually, they'll give up. Eventually, they'll stop describing you, and they'll start describing themselves. Like my friend said to me, Simon, I don't know. All I know is that I can sit in a room with you. I don't even have to talk to you, and I feel inspired, and I got goosebumps. In fact, I'm getting them right now. They will put into words the value you have in their life, and you will have the emotional reaction. You'll either well up with tears or you will get goosebumps. This puts you in the ballpark. This is where your why lives. And if you do this with multiple friends, they will say the same kind of thing. In fact, sometimes they'll say the same exact thing, because your why is the thing you give to the world, and amongst your closest and best friends, it is the space you fill in their lives. So that's a fun little way you can find your why.
Rule number 4, ask for help.
By ourselves as individuals, we are not very good. We cannot lift heavy weights by ourselves, and we cannot solve complex problems by ourselves. But in groups, we are remarkable. And so all of this stuff, whether it's life, whether it's whatever your job was in the service, whatever your job is out of the service, whether it's finding a new job, whether it's making your way, finding out sort of what your passion is, all of these things are incredibly difficult. They're all incredibly complicated. And the person who thinks that they can tackle any of these problems by themselves is a fool. Plain old, you're a fool. You cannot. I'm going to tell you, you cannot do it alone. And so asking for help is perhaps the greatest single thing anyone can ever learn, especially where everything is new and the stresses are different and often feel overwhelming and scary, totally unfamiliar. And the longer you are in the service, the scarier it is. Because you had 15 years doing one thing, knowing one thing, learning a culture, and now not only is it new, people don't even understand what you did and what you know. The military is one of the most misunderstood cultures in the world. It's so closed and insular that people just don't know it. So you're dealing with that as well. And so to ask for help in any form is brilliant. This is the single thing that completely transformed my own culture. I had a small business. I quit my job and started my own marketing consultancy bunch of years ago. And for a few years, I ran on force of personality, and it was great. But then if you have a little bit of success, force of personality doesn't work anymore. And all of a sudden things started crashing in around me because I couldn't do it all. And I thought I had to know all the answers. And if I didn't, I pretended that I did. Because I thought that's what I had to do. And I learned the very, very hard way, where it was a dark period that I had to learn to ask for help. And it turns out I was surrounded by people who wanted to help me. They just didn't, because they didn't know I wanted it or needed it. And it was the willingness to ask for it or accept it that transformed my life and put me on the path that I'm on now. Now I'm really open about, I can tell you stuff I'm really good at, and I'll tell you I'm good at that. And I'll tell you I am not good at that. I need help with that. If I'm struggling, or if I'm stuck, if I'm confused, I say, can I ask you? I call up friends, I call up people, mentors, and say, I need your help. Can you help me? And here's what I've learned about the building of trust. We don't build trust by offering people our help. We build trust by asking people for help. That's what actually creates trust, because it's an expression of vulnerability, right? It allows people to offer us safety and protection. And that's an act of service for the other person.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, put people first.
The tension is healthy. The tension is good. If all you have is empathy, then you have a hippie commune, and you're not actually going to cure anything. But if all you're doing is driving the numbers, you're going to have a short lifespan and break the machine also. And you might have a spike, and then you'll disappear. Or all your best people say, I hate it here, and they go work somewhere else and take all of their brilliance somewhere else. So there is a balance, but there's also a hierarchy. It's not 50-50. There's no such thing as 50-50. It doesn't exist. You can't say, well, we're 50% driven by performance and 50% driven by culture, because you will face decisions where one of those things will sacrifice the other. The question is, which one are you going to choose? There has to be a bias towards people. There has to be a bias towards the teamwork, the environment. And the will to succeed is driven by the belief in the cause. If the cause is clear and the metrics, and you're letting people see the metrics so they feel like we're making progress. Again, go back to that marathon analogy, right? Which is, you're exhausted, you're tired, but you're getting closer to the finish line. You start running faster, not slower.
That's a good point.
And so it's keeping people included to know what the metrics mean, and which ones are trending and which ones are absolute. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with the drive to succeed, as long as there's a context within which that drive exists.
Rule number 6, be there for others.
When we are willing to put ourselves at risk to be there for someone, right? Don't worry if this goes south, I will be there for you. Which may mean working late, it may mean working extra hours, it may mean putting our reputations on the line. I mean, there's a lot of things that takes. But when we genuinely promise to be there for someone, and it has to be genuine, because if it gets tested, it's very easy to find out if it was genuine or not. But if it's genuine, then it's repaid remarkably. Let me give you a silly example. Let's say that, so I talk about this sometimes, which is the giving of time and energy is more powerful than the giving of money. You can't build trust with money. So paying somebody bonuses and giving somebody a big salary, though feels nice, is not earning or building any trust whatsoever. You cannot pay for trust. And here's the example. Let's say you're moving house, and one of your friends says, you know what? I want to help you. We've been friends for years. I'm going to pay for the moving van. Here's $5,000 and the moving van. Let me know how it goes. Have a great move. That's really generous, right? Another friend says, you know what? I want to help you move. And they come over the week before and they're sitting in your house, packing boxes. They're sweat dripping down their brow. They're there with you all day. They're there to help load the truck. They're there to help unload the truck. They're there to unwrap everything, right? They paid zero money. They give you time and energy, which are non-redeemable commodities. Money, we make money, we spend money, we make money back. It's a redeemable commodity. Time and energy are non-redeemable commodities. And so when someone gives us something that they cannot get back, it has a much more powerful effect on how we feel. So now both those people call you another time and say, I need your help. Which one are you more apt to help? The one who gave you money or the one who gave you time and energy? And that this is a good lesson for leadership as well. Giving our time and energy is often more powerful than simply just throwing money at someone.
Rule number 7, take the risk of honesty.
Let's say there's one person who started their own little business, a little consultancy, right? Got my shingle out. I'm a consultant, right? And everywhere they go, they keep telling you that they're better than everyone else. They keep telling you they're smarter than everyone else. They keep telling you that, the problem with the big companies is they don't have the flexibility. It actually gets to the point of being annoying, to the point that we don't want to actually work with them because we don't believe them, right? Now let's change the scenario. You meet that same person, and they introduce themselves. Look, there's a lot of good consultants out there. Some of them are a lot better than me. But I wake up every single day to be a better version of what I do today than I did yesterday. And I can tell you that the advice I give today is even better than it was yesterday, and the advice I'm going to give tomorrow is even better. Because for me, it's an education, and that's why I love working with open-minded, wonderful clients who are partners. Because what we end up doing is growing together. Right? Now, that's one person. Think about how appealing that person is. They've actually told you that you may actually get as good or better advice somewhere else, but it's who they are and who they're being and the disposition that they bring that makes them way more trustworthy and us wanting to work with them. And it's the same for big companies. It's got nothing to do with the size of the company, it's called humility and honesty. I remember young in my career, I experienced this myself when I went off and hung my shingle out, and I was I had a little marketing company, a little marketing consultancy. I remember going into meetings, and the client would say, "We want you to do all of this for us," and I'd say, "I'm really good at that, pretty good at that, okay at that, really bad at that. I highly recommend you hire somebody else to do that, and I'm happily partner with them for them to do that." And the clients wanted to work with me more, not even though I just told them I can't do that. Only because I was the only one who was honest. Everybody else they talked to, big or small, told them that they were great at everything, which is just not true. Nobody's great at everything. And so it's amazing. When you take the risk to be honest, it pays dividends in the trust that you build.
Rule number 8, lead with your values.
You have to be clear and open about what you stand for. And just like when you hire somebody, you want to make sure that when you hire them, that they share your values, that they believe in your vision. They don't just think it's corny, or marketing, but rather that they buy into it. And sometimes we'll make mistakes, and sometimes people will come and they fall in love with it after the fact. But we try on balance to bring people that we believe will get along with the people who work here because of our values and our cause. And so too is it with suppliers. I think that, or clients, it's the same thing, which is we stand for what we stand for, and our goal is to attract people who believe what we believe. The more vocal we are about what we believe, those people literally will come to us, or turn down a competitor who may even be cheaper because they would rather do business with us. And so it's okay to do business with a supplier that doesn't believe what we believe, but we have to go in with eyes open, knowing full well that this is just a transaction. You offer a decent product, you give me a decent price. This is not going to be a lifelong relationship. This is a transactional relationship. And when it's done, I'm just going to hold you to very different standards, right? Because when it's transactional, we're a little less patient when things go wrong. And sometimes we kid ourselves. You just can't do that too often. It's like if you're living a healthy lifestyle, you can have chocolate cake, just not too often. I think the more vocal you are, the more you attract. And then you have to make decisions like you're hiring people because they're going to become a member of your family as well. This is the difference between the short-term finite-minded and the long-term infinite-minded. The finite-minded, is it the cheapest today? Is it the best relationship today? And pay no attention to the secondary or tertiary effects and definitely pay no attention to what will happen in 5 years. Whereas that long-term minded, infinite-minded player looks at looks at something and looks at someone and says, well, you know, you're not the cheapest, but I think we're going to get along just fine. And over the course of time, the quality of work will far outweigh whatever you paid. A friend of mine who's a consultant loves to joke about her clients that they never have the time or money to do it right the first time, but they always have the time and money to do it again. And I think when you're infinite-minded, you consider those factors from the beginning.
Rule number 9, embrace change.
If I asked you, do you need to change? And you said to me, no, I'd be worried. You know, like, you think you've figured everything out, like emotionally, professionally, all your relationships, everything's golden? Oh, okay, how's that working out for you? You know? I think the answer is always yes, which is to view ourselves or our organizations as works in progress. You know, that is an infinite mindset. Infinite mindset is fundamentally constant improvement. So, you know, there's big change, there's little change, there's tweaks, there's dramatic change. Sometimes it's reacting to changing cultures, changes in culture, politics, technology. You know, sometimes the change is our own, sometimes we have to react to it. But I think the honest answer is yes, we have to change. There's always opportunity to improve something. So there's this notion in businesses that people fear change, which is just fundamentally not true. People fear sudden change, you know? But incremental change is not threatening. People fear change that threatens them, right? And very often the way we change manage is we do lots of PowerPoint presentations about what's coming and don't worry, and we have all these things, and we treat it very rationally, and what we're ignoring is the emotional response. Now, there are some people who love change. It's an infinite-minded thing to embrace uncertainty, to see opportunity in surprise. For some people, especially people who have gotten good at doing something for 10 years, 20 years, that all of a sudden you say you're going to change it, they fear, again, there's that emotional word, they fear that they won't know how to, or it will set them back. And so no number of rational assurances will help them get over that. At some point, we have to just let them go through the process.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have good intentions.
We bandy these words around a little too quickly these days. They all kind of mean the same thing, you know, authenticity, intention, you know, purpose, flow, all these things, you know. Of course it matters. What is the birth of this motivation? Is it for PR? Is it to hire millennials because that's what they want, so we'll give it to them? You know, is it because the street demands it, or is it because it's something I fundamentally believe in? I'm very for what the round table announced. The statement's a bit pablum, but you know, it reads like the generic values they put on the wall of a generic company. I would have liked to have seen them, the people who they attribute the work to in the press release, to folks like Kip Tindall from Container Store or Jim Senegal from Costco, who've been leading this way for decades and have been outspoken about the way business has been done and been criticized for it for decades. Like, they're better messengers for it because they have that deep intention. They fundamentally believe business should be done this way. And the true infinite-minded player wants to build a business, not just to build a better business for themselves. It's they want to build a business because they want to build business better. So they don't just come up with an idea and then hoard it. They come up with an idea and share it because it's good for the game. It's about perpetuating the game. So if the intention is to see all ships rise, then I'm very open to what these companies are saying. If the intention is to see our ship rise, I become a little cynical.
When are you at your best?
I'm at my best when I'm around people who believe what I believe. I know it seems silly, but I try very, very hard to sort of stack the deck, you know, to put myself in a position of strength. So for example, you know, somebody asked me just yesterday, have you ever had sort of a bad, you know, engagement? And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, not really. But it's not because I'm some sort of genius or anything like that. It's because I stack the deck. It's because I want to be there. I want to be around people who want me there. In other words, if I'm somebody's 10th choice,
And I'll probably turn it down. Whereas if I'm their first choice, they really want me there, and so I'm more likely to have a good engagement. They're supportive of me, I'm supportive of them, and so I'm at my best when I stack the deck, when I choose to be in an environment where my strengths are there.
I spoke at an education summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at an education summit for Apple. At the education summit for Microsoft, I would say that 70% of the executives spent about 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Education Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One is playing this way, and one is playing that way. One is playing finite, and the other one is playing infinite. Guess which one gets frustrated. So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. And let me tell you, this thing was spectacular. It was the most elegant piece of technology I'd ever used. The user interface was incredible. The design was spectacular. I absolutely loved it. It was easy to use, and it was bright and gorgeous and fantastic. It didn't work on iTunes, which is a different problem, so I couldn't use it, but it was amazing. And elegant. My God, it was elegant. So I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a very senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy. And, I like to stir pots. So I turned to him, I said, Microsoft gave me their new Zune. And it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player understands sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. Sometimes your product is better and sometimes it's worse. The goal isn't to be the best every day. The goal isn't to outdo your competition every day. That's a finite construction. If I had said to Microsoft, I've got the new iPod Touch and it's so much better than your Zune, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? React, 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 react. Finite players play to beat the people around them. Infinite players play to be better than themselves. To wake up every single day and say, how can we make our company a better version of itself today than it was yesterday? How can we create a product this week that's better than the product we created last week? We also have to play the infinite game. It's not about being ranked number one. It's not about having more followers on Twitter than your friends. It's not about outdoing anyone. It's about how to outdo yourself. It's not about selling more books or getting more TED views than somebody else. It's about how to make sure that the work that you're producing is better than the work you produced before. You are your competition. And that is what ensures you stay in the game the longest. And that is what ensures you find joy. Because the joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement.
Every decision we make in our lives as individuals or as organizations is a piece of communication. It's our way of saying something about who we are and what we believe. This is why authenticity matters. This is why you have to say and do the things you actually believe, because the things you say and do are symbols of who you are. And we look for those symbols so we can find people who believe what we believe. Our very survival depends on it. So if you're putting out false symbols, you will attract people to those symbols, but you won't be able to form trust with them. This is what Tiger Woods did to us. He lied. He lied. He told us what he thought we wanted to hear. And it was great, and we were drawn to it. And all of us who kind of liked that idea of the sort of the good guy, were drawn to it, until we found out it was a lie. He could have been the bad boy of golf. He could have had all the same endorsements and had a fantastic career and still been hailed as one of the great athletes of our day. But he didn't. He chose to lie. Good luck forming trust again, Tiger. We don't believe you. We don't trust you. The goal of putting something out there, if you say what you believe and you do what you believe, you will attract people who believe what you believe. If you go to one of your friends and you say to one of your friends, how would you like me to dress so that you'll like me better? How would you want me to address you? How do you want me to speak so that you'll like me more? Right? Your friends are going to look at you and be like, what are you talking about? You're like, come on. What should I wear so that you'll find me more appealing? And how would you like me to speak to you so that you'll like me more? And your friends are going to tell you, just be yourself. That's why I like you. Just be yourself. Now think about what we do in industry. What do? We do market research, and we go out and we ask the customers, what kind of things, what style should we speak to you? How should we decorate ourselves? What kind of things are you drawn to so that we can do those things so you'll like us more? It's just as ridiculous. It's just as ridiculous. Organizations should say and do the things they actually believe, and they will attract people who believe what they believe. Or they can choose to lie, and at the slightest hint that they might be lying, cynicism sets in. And people start saying, I'm not sure I can trust these guys because there's not a lot of consistency in all the things they say and do, which means they can't have a very strong belief set or they're lying to me. And we call them inauthentic. The entire process of asking other people who we should be is inauthentic. That's hilarious to me. All these positioning studies we do are inherent. We're going to do a study to find out from people so we can be more authentic. That's hilarious. Say and do what you actually believe, and the symbols you put out there, the things you say and the things you do, those red hats are ways that people can find you. What you have the ability to do as designers is create those symbols and allow people to use those things to say something about who they are. Work for companies, work for clients, work for people who you believe what they believe. Show up and feel a part of something bigger than yourself. And your part is to put what they believe into pictures and words and symbols and graphics so that other people can use those things to say something about who they are. People put Harley-Davidson logos on their body to say something about who they are. Corporate logo. Ain't no Procter & Gamble's tattooed on anybody's arm. Because Harley means something. They stand for something. People put that tattoo on there not to tell you that they own a motorcycle. They put that tattoo there to tell you something about themselves. You ever see anybody with a Mac laptop put a sticker over that beautiful shining apple? Ain't never gonna happen. Then how will you know who I am? Do you ever see anybody with a PC break out the Windex to clean out their computer? Mac people? Have you ever seen a dirty Mac? Doesn't exist. Does not exist. Why? Because it's who I am. These are symbols we use. The companies that are crystal clear in what they believe, and they're disciplined in how they do it, and they're consistent in what they do, and everything they say and everything they do serves as a symbol of the set of values and beliefs. We use those symbols to say something about who we are. We surround ourselves with the people and the products and the brands that say something about who we are. And when we can find the people who believe what we believe, we're weirdly drawn to them because our very survival depends on it. We need it. And so the more you can give of yourself, the more you can give of what you believe, the more you can with discipline, say and do the things you actually believe, strange things start to happen.
What are your thoughts and what's your approach on finding and building upon passions?
Passion is not an actionable word. It's correct, that those who do the things that they're passionate about do better, but it's not helpful advice. And so the question is, where does passion come from? Passion is a result. Passion is an energy. Passion is the feeling you have when you're engaged in something that you love. Passion is the feeling you have that you would probably do this for free, and you can't believe somebody pays you to do it, And I think we mistake that passion is something we do in our private lives, but it shouldn't be done in our careers, for example. And I'm a firm believer that you are who you are. And anybody who says, I'm different at home than I am at work, in one of those two places, you're lying. And the goal is to make everything you do in home and at work something that you have excitement to do. So how do you find the things that you're excited to do? Well, it's actually easier than you think. What are the things that you love to do? What are the things that you would do for free? How can you recreate that feeling and be paid for it? So what are the things that I do on the weekend, right? I love, I'm very involved in the art world. I love to go to museums and galleries, but I love to go see dance and performances because I want to see how others are interpreting the world. So that inspires me. New ideas, new thoughts, new ways of looking at the world are things that interest me privately, and I seek it out and pay money for it, right? So does that mean I have to have a career in the arts? No, it means I have to have a career where new ideas are explored, where people are experimenting and trying things out, and I have to explore new ideas and try things out, and I'm just as excited to go to work every day as I am to, go do something on a Saturday night. And so the idea of finding your passion is ironically simple because you should be doing stuff that you enjoy sometimes. What is the stuff that you enjoy, and then what is the stuff that you love? Who are the people that you love, and what do they all have in common? Nelson Mandela is a particularly special case study in the leadership world because he is universally regarded as a great leader. You can take other personalities, and depending on the nation you go to, we have different opinions about other personalities. But Nelson Mandela across the world is universally regarded as a great leader. He was actually the son of a tribal chief. And he was asked one day, "How did you learn to be a great leader?" And he responded that he would go with his father to tribal meetings. And he remembers two things when his father would meet with other elders. One, they would always sit in a circle. And two, his father was always the last to speak. You will be told your whole life that you need to learn to listen. I would say that you need to learn to be the last to speak. I see it in boardrooms every day of the week. Even people who consider themselves good leaders, who may actually be decent leaders, will walk into a room and say, "Here's the problem, here's what I think, but I'm interested in your opinion, let's go around the room." It's too late. The skill to hold your opinions to yourself until everyone has spoken does two things. One, it gives everybody else the feeling that they have been heard. It gives everyone else the ability to feel that they have contributed. And two, you get the benefit of hearing what everybody else has to think before you render your opinion. The skill is really to keep your opinions to yourself. If you agree with somebody, don't nod yes. If you disagree with somebody, don't nod no. Simply sit there, take it all in, and the only thing you're allowed to do is ask questions so that you can understand what they mean and why they have the opinion that they have. You must understand from where they are speaking, why they have the opinion they have, not just what they are saying. And at the end, you will get your turn. It sounds easy, it's not. Practice being the last to speak. That's what Nelson Mandela did.
How do you develop self-confidence? We're kind of going off here now, but this is a topic I'm really passionate about right now. I believe self-doubt is one of the biggest killers to anyone's dreams.
Yeah.
So how does someone develop self-confidence and sustain it with the ever-going changes and stresses and uncertainties that always come up?
Yeah.
Once you reach a certain level, there's a new uncertainty.
Yeah. So I think it's ironic that we call it self-confidence, because I don't, for one, think it comes from the inside. I think our self-confidence comes from the outside, right?
You mean that's the wrong way of going about it, or you think that's where it comes from in general?
We are being misdirected by the name. When we say build your self-confidence, that's the instruction is saying go inside, look inside oneself. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a false direction. Children aren't born self-confident. Their confidence is built from their parents and their friends and their teachers, where they're rewarded when they do well and they're pushed when they fail, when they can do better. Simply, we know this, that simply telling kids that they're great all the time actually doesn't build self-confidence, actually does the total opposite. Right? And I, for one, I can tell you, in my own experience, my own self-confidence, 100% comes from the relationships that I have. It's not some deep internal fortitude. A world-famous trapeze artist is not going to try a brand new death-defying act for the first time without a net. So it's the people in my life. It's when I do doubt myself that somebody says, you got this. When somebody says, I believe in you. When somebody says, no matter what happens, whether it succeeds or fails, I'm going to be by your side. That's when I have the confidence to do difficult things.
Wow.
Right? I don't have some natural battery that just
Right.
you know, that to me is bravado.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's self-confidence. You know, being a huge risk taker is not an indication of self-confidence to me. You know, jumping out of a plane and jumping out of a plane with a parachute are two different things, right?
Right.
To me, self-confidence is measured, and there should be a degree of doubt. But I think true self-confidence, belief in oneself and belief in one's cause, you know, I could not do the things that I'm doing, and I would not have the strength to have made the sacrifices that I've made, or continue to wake up on a daily basis to drive to spread this message, if I were alone. And so when we talk about building one's self-confidence, I think the mistake that we make is that we look inside. I think the reality is when we try to build our self-confidence, we should be looking to our friends. We should be nursing our relationships. When I'm looking to build my self-confidence, the question is, who around me do I need to take care of? You know, the way we build our self-confidence is by helping somebody else build theirs.
Right.
It's an act of, we will build our confidence with an act of service.
What are your thoughts around courage? How do people get the courage to play the long game?
It's not the long game, it's the infinite game. Because a long game could be 5 years, right?
True.
Yeah, this is forever.
How do people build that?
Everything that we're talking about in the infinite game is really, 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 really hard. It is so much easier to build a company based on short-term ambitions than it is an infinite cause. It just is, right? It's also fun, right? Until it's not. Less inspiring, but sometimes fun, right? Hitting a goal feels good, right? It's much easier to just hire and fire people frequently, hire fast, fire fast, as to hiring slowly and firing slowly because we try and take care of our people as best we can. It's hard to build teams. All of that stuff we talked about leadership, like what am I supposed to do to build a trusting team? Well, I wish I could give you a list of 5 things. It's really, really hard to be a parent. It's much easier to be an uncle or an aunt or not have kids, right? It's hard, right? So why do it? You know, it's fun and exciting to try and beat our competitors, you know? But to have to face our own weaknesses every day, oh, that's exhausting. You know, existential flexibility, I'd rather not. I just would rather not, you know? So the reason this takes courage to completely change our mindset, A, about the game that we're actually players in, and how we want to approach these things, and do we want to shift our mindset and our organizations to prepare for the infinite game, to be organized for the infinite game, it takes courage because we're going to be swimming upstream in a world that is very finite driven. You know, the pressures on us are overwhelming from Wall Street or our own egos or from internal incentive structures or our bosses, whatever it is. The pressures are overwhelming for us to play the finite game. And so how do you stand up to massive external pressure? Courage. And courage is something that comes from relationships. You know, it's external. A world-famous trapeze artist would never attempt a brand new death-defying act for the first time without a net. They would never do it. So why do we think that we could do something difficult without external support too? I've had the opportunity to meet real heroes, people who've risked their lives to save the lives of others with the belief that they were going to die, and they didn't. And when asked, why did you do it? They all say something similar, which is they would have done it for me. It's external. And so we have to take the time to foster and take care of people around us, to nurture our relationships, because when we're going to be doing something difficult, when we're going to be swimming upstream, when we're going to be innovating and doing something different, there are days we're going to doubt ourselves. There are days we're going to get knocked in our ass. There are days that storms are going to rise, and we have to have people who say, I got your back. You need to do this. We need you. The world needs this. Keep going. I believe in you, you know? And so courage comes from not only our willingness to do that for others, but then their willingness to do it for us. And if we commit ourselves to a just cause and we're willing to do those things, then, you know, the great thing is we take a lot of people with us and change the world for the better. And isn't that sort of the point of an infinite life? to leave this world in better shape than we found it, to leave the companies that we work for in better shape than when we started, to leave our families stronger and better capable than they can do without us. You know, isn't that what it means to live an infinite life? That we can literally live on beyond our own lives.
We take accountability away from people and we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So we're actually destroying people's confidence or ability to make decisions because we keep answering their questions or making decisions for them. I had a boss many years ago, one of the best leaders I ever had, Peter Intamaggio, and he wouldn't answer a single question I asked. It drove me absolutely nuts. Hey, Peter, you know, what should I do? Well, what do you think we should do? Well, I think we should do this. He goes, well, you should give that a try then. You know? Or he would just ask me questions. He goes, well, have you considered this? I went, no. He goes, well, maybe think about that, you know? But he would never tell me the answer. He'd always tell me the parameters. What he taught me was self-reliance. It was the most valuable lesson I probably ever learned. Very often, you know, somebody will come and say, you know, should we go with blue or green? I'll go with green. Well, we just answered the question. We'll say, go with the one you think we should go with. Well, what should we do here? Make the decision that you think is the right decision to make, you know? And then let them make the decision. And when we give people accountability, the amazing thing is they rise to it.
Yeah.
But we keep taking the accountability because we keep answering all the questions. So there's a very easy lesson for everyone here is stop replying to all the emails that you're getting while you're away, right? Like, I know what happens, you know, in every break or right now, you know, there's an email that says, you know, should we go with this one or that one? And you're replying. And in every break, you're going to reply to all your emails and tell people your opinion on what you think they should do. Versus saying, I'm going away for a few days for this conference so I can learn to be a better leader. Hold down the fort while I'm away. If there's an emergency, figure it out, you know? Or only call me if you absolutely do not know the answer.
Have to.
And stop replying to all the emails, and they now have to work. You're giving away responsibility. One of the reasons they don't take responsibility is because they don't give it to them.
Heck, man, I've disagreed with my own ideas. You know, I've been pig-headed and dogmatic about this is the way we got to go, and everybody is wonderful and
then 10 years later, you're
kind of like falls apart, and they're just like,
okay.
Yeah, I kind of screwed the pooch on that one.
Yeah.
But I take accountability.
Yeah.
You know, or we find in the middle, somebody goes, hey, if we do this, we can probably be more successful, and we pivot. Mm-hmm. There has to be, at the decision-making ranks, there has to be a humility, that the ideas don't always have to come from me.
Right.
Bob Gaylor, the 5th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, has the best definition of humility I've ever heard. He said, don't confuse humility with meekness. Humility is being open to the ideas of others. Mm. So, you know, it's not about like, oh, shucks. That's not humility. You know, you and I know some remarkable leaders, people of great power and authority, and they have huge egos.
Yes.
You know, they know they're good and they don't mind talking about how good they are. But when somebody says, hey, I got an idea, they lean in like they're little kids. They go, let's hear it. You know, I'm looking at some of the photographs on your wall, and some of the folks that I know here, they have an insatiable curiosity for ideas, and even though they're unbelievably accomplished, if you have something to share with them, they want to talk about it. Yeah. They want to hear about it. That's humility to me. You know? So it's not this, you know, it's not me, it's, you know, right. Self-confidence is a good thing. Thinking you're better than everyone else, that's unhealthy.
Ooh, that's good, yeah.
You know, thinking you're good is healthy. Mm-hmm. Thinking you're better than others is unhealthy.
One thing, make them work together. Shared incentives is also a part of the thing. Usually all we do is give individual incentives, which means we're only incentivizing behavior to work individually. And by the way, incentives don't always have to be financial. It can be just recognition and reward. You know, catch people doing things right. So when you see people helping each other and sharing, call it out publicly. You know, compliment publicly, criticize privately, in front of the rest of the team. Give people promotions when there's a behavior that you want to promote, like teaming. But also ask people to solve problems together and thank them together. And if one person comes to you and complains, well, I'm doing all the work, you say, well, why don't you find out maybe they're struggling, maybe they're like, we have to push back. And also, I think the most important thing is leading by example. Asking for help. I mean, when the leader acts like they know everything and they have all the answers, then all it's doing is telling everybody else, you better know everything and have all the answers because that's how you're going to get ahead here. And so I think one of the most difficult things for anybody in a leadership position to get comfortable with is is saying, I don't know, or I need help, or can somebody help me, or can you do this with me? I love teaming with folks on my team. It doesn't matter what the rank structure is, bring in someone junior, let's work together. Even if all they're doing is poking holes, do you think this is good? No, I think it can be better. Okay, let me try again. So I think demonstrating the behavior that we want is a big part of it.
There are 5 practices in order to lead with an infinite mindset. You have to have a just cause. You have to have trusting teams. You have to have a worthy rival. You have to have a capacity for existential flexibility, and you have to have the courage to lead. So just cause. We have to give our people something to advance. A cause so just that they would be willing to sacrifice their interests in order to do so. In other words, turn down a better paying job, or frequent business trips, or working late hours. And though I may not like those things, I do them because it feels worth it, because I believe in what I'm a part of here, because I feel that I'm helping advance. Because there's no achieving in the infinite game. The goal is not final achievement. The goal is advancing, to progress in the infinite game. And to have that vision of an idealized state of the world that all men are created equal, right? It's an ideal that a nation is striving towards, that will never actually get there, but will die trying. That's the point. And we can offer people the same thing inside an organization. In fact, we have to give them something to advance. Now, how is this different from the why? A why comes from the past. It is an origin story. Every single one of us has our own unique why. It is our birthright. It comes from the sum total of how we were raised as kids. It is objective. You have one, and you have one for the rest of your life. The only one, right? And the rest of our lives are about making the decisions that help us keep in balance with our why. A just cause doesn't come from the past. A just cause is about the future. It's about where we're going, right? You can have multiple just causes. You can have one professionally, you can have one personally, you can have one for your family, you can have one for your church. And we're involved in all of these. There's massive pressure put on people, especially young people, to what's your vision? Well, we're not all Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. We're not all visionaries. We don't have to have a vision, but we do have to find a vision, that we can find someone else's vision, and we are so compelled by it that we want to make it our own. That's what it means to go work for a company with a visionary leader, that we believe in that vision so clearly that we take their vision and we make it our own. And we will happily contribute our work, our effort, in order to advance what is now my vision. Right? Martin Luther King had a vision. He stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and told us his vision, but his vision became our vision. So I may not have come up with that vision, but I found it, and I'd like to devote time and energy to help advance it, even beyond him.
There's a whole industry around, I think, work-life balance. Is that what it was? Yeah. It's like there's a massive industry that's just trying to teach this and help people with work-life balance.
Yeah, the problem
it seems like it's failing.
It's
right?
it's treating a symptom, isn't it? It's like so many things in our life. So here's the bad analogy. So we buy running sneakers, and they have really thick, you know this. Yeah. They have really thick heels, tons of padding in the heel, right? But that's because people don't know how to run, right? Because we land with our heel, which is bad for our joints. You're not supposed to have an extended knee. Yeah, all of it. You're supposed to be a toe planter, where your knees are always bent. I mean, you know all this. Yeah. So instead of teaching people how to run, what we do is we just build shoes with more padding in the heel and treat the symptom rather than the cause, right? And I think it's the same thing. We treat symptoms instead of the cause.
So
the work-life balance thing, what we're doing is instead of changing businesses, instead of changing the way a business operates and changing the way in which we teach leaders to operate with an infinite mindset, so that we more naturally have work-life balance. And let's be crystal clear what work-life balance means. Doing more yoga does not create work-life balance. Right?
That's the shoe. That's the shoe.
That's the cushion on the shoe, right?
Yeah.
The imbalance is, I feel safe at home, I don't feel safe at work. That's the imbalance. Wow. And no amount of yoga or vacation time is gonna fix that. What fixes that work-life imbalance is better quality leadership in our businesses. And then what you'll find is the balance. But instead what we do is we have an entire industry that's treating the symptom, that's putting cushion on the shoe to make us feel kinda for an hour that I've achieved balance.
Same, yeah.
You know? But it's just for an hour. And, you know, we literally market. You know, companies market themselves as helping provide you work-life balance. Unless you're teaching leaders to the people who are my bosses, then you are not helping me achieve work-life balance. You're helping me numb the pain. You're helping me cushion the blow. We all carry a narrative. Someone's lazy. Someone's stupid. Someone doesn't care. Someone's only in it for themselves. These are narratives that we carry. And the problem is when we evaluate their behavior through our narrative, it'll become self-reinforcing. We will see the things that reinforce our narrative. And the problem is then we'll treat them that way. If we've decided someone's lazy, we're going to treat them as lazy. So there's a great exercise to do, which is literally take out a piece of paper, and when we're struggling with someone, to think, what are the 20 other things that could be going on in their life? So yeah, number one, they're lazy. Possible. It's absolutely possible. Number two, they're having trouble in their marriage. Number three, things have gone wrong and they don't know how to ask for help. Number four, they're still struggling with the trauma of COVID. Number five, their kids are flunking out of school. Like all of a sudden, we realize there's a lot of other reasons that could explain their behavior, and we will then treat them accordingly. We will treat them with greater empathy. You know, instead of walking into someone's classroom and saying, what the hell, your performance is still down. I've had this conversation with you before. You got to get your performance up, or I don't know what's going to happen. Or you can walk into their classroom and say, your performance is down. We've had this conversation before. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. They have a problem, but they aren't necessarily the problem. And even if ultimately it does become that they're a bad fit for the culture, they are still not the problem. They still are just a bad fit for the culture. They have a problem. We can help them solve that problem by going to help them relocate to a different school district where they're going to be so much happier. We're going to be so much happier. Everybody gets to be so much happier. So the other story I was thinking of is the story of Alan Mulally. When he took over Ford, Ford was losing money hand over fist. In other words, performance was in decline. And when he sat down with his most senior executives and he asked for a report on how their divisions were going, regular green, every single one of them delivered PowerPoints with all green slides. And he said at the end of the meeting, how can everything be green if we're losing billions of dollars? And they just sat there. And he had another meeting. Same thing, all green. And he said the same thing. How can everything be green if we're losing billions of dollars? The problem was the previous leader, if you delivered a red slide, you got fired. And so there was no way that anybody was going to tell the truth because their job depended on it. And so one executive took the risk to turn one slide red. And Mulally said, thank you for the visibility. That's great transparency. Now, how can we all help him fix that problem? He has a problem. He is not the problem. All the other executives thought he was going to get fired. Turns out he wasn't. And slowly but surely, everybody, including leadership, could finally get a clear and transparent view of what was actually going on in their organization. And they worked together to solve the problems. If somebody was struggling, people said, how can we help you? Rather than, I'm fine, you're the one that's screwing everything up. So it's a great way to think about it. We come to work feeling uncomfortable that some of the decisions that are being made don't benefit the good of the employee, that it really benefits this artificial constituency that we call the shareholder, which is really just a bunch of institutional investors. There's this shareholder myth because there's been a steady decline of the middle class being involved in the stock market for years. And the whole point of the stock market was that we all get to share in the wealth that we helped build, because it's on the back of average Joe employees that produced the great wealth in the nation. And the whole point of the stock market, the genius of the modern day corporation, the genius of the public company, was that we all get to share in the wealth that we're helping produce. Unfortunately, over the course of the 80s and 90s, we've seen systems produced where we're seeing the general population, the middle class, actually be less included in that success. And the reason I wrote The Infinite Game was because I myself got tired of being told by people in positions of authority or people of extreme wealth that I was naive, that I don't understand how business works. And for many years, I believed them. I thought, maybe I am the dumb one, right? We all kind of feel that because they have the power, they have the authority, they have the money, they know more than we do.
but we still go to work and feel uncomfortable. And it turns out that that discomfort, that gut feeling that says that there's something wrong here, turns out that the majority actually knows something. And to me, this is a world is flat moment, that the people who've learned to game the system, that this discomfort that we feel, we actually are right. Like, they actually don't understand the game they're in. Business is an infinite game, and when you play with a finite mindset, lots of people suffer, including the companies that they themselves are trying to build. That's the great irony. The great irony is the way you build great companies is with an infinite mindset. The way you build great companies is by prioritizing people before profit. The way you build great companies is will before resources. Both things important, but there has to be this general leaning where we can feel. When we come to work and feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, where we feel that our work and our effort is worth more than simply the money we make. We are designed to take care of each other. As social animals, it is in our biology that we will take care of each other. This is why it feels so good when somebody does something really nice for us with no expectation of anything in return. We've all had the experience where somebody does something nice and you're like, oh my God, thank you. And then they put their hand out, you're like, oh, it kind of like ruins the whole experience,
Completely,
right?
absolutely.
It ruins it. But when they just do it and they're like, no. And you're like, please. And you're like, no, it's my pleasure.
Yes.
You know, not only does our esteem for them go up, but it feels good. Yeah. Likewise, it feels good when we do something for someone else with no expectation of anything in return. When we give our time and our energy. Money actually doesn't work, believe it or not. Like if I told you I gave $500 to charity this morning, you'd be like, okay.
That's great, Simon.
But if I told you that last weekend I gave up my Saturday and went to painted schools in the inner city, you'd be like, nice, that's really awesome. Yeah. Right? Now, the value of my labor was worth a lot less than $500. And that's the point, right? That's the point, which is we are designed to take care of each other. And there's a chemical called oxytocin, which is the chemical responsible for our feelings of love and friendship and trust. When you look at somebody you adore and you go like this, that's oxytocin. When somebody touches you and says, oh my God, it's so good to see you. Touch creates oxytocin. It's so good to see you.
Yes.
You know, it actually makes us feel closer to each other,
yes.
You know? When oxytocin is released in our bodies, not only does it make us feel good, not only does it boost our immune systems, but the more oxytocin we have in our bodies, it actually makes us more generous because the human body is trying to get us to look after each other. And it gets even better than that. The person who does the act of generosity, giving of time or energy without expectation of anything in return, they get a shot of oxytocin. The person on the receiving end gets a shot of oxytocin. And even witnessing an act of generosity or kindness releases oxytocin. It feels good to see somebody do something nice. And the more oxytocin we have in our bodies, as I said, means we're more likely to do something nice for somebody. This is the biology of pay it forwards. It's the human body's desperate attempt to get us to look after each other. And so when we create environments where we allow that to flow, it does naturally. It just takes care of itself. It's just biology. When we create environments where we restrict that, it actually does the opposite. It releases a chemical called cortisol, which is the feeling of stress and anxiety. Cortisol actually inhibits oxytocin, which means if we work in a poorly led organization, not only do we have high stress, but it actually inhibits empathy. In other words, I'm less likely to even want to care about somebody because of the poor leadership and the poor environment that's been provided for me to work in. Right? And the more cortisol we have in our bodies, stress goes up, anxiety goes up, it affects our immune systems. Happy people live longer. Happy people have lower rates of cancer, diabetes, and heart disease, which means when you're in a position of leadership, you're actually medically responsible for the lives of these people. Get the environment right, they will live longer, they will suffer lower cases of disease, and they will probably have happier families because of it. Whereas if you're a bad leader, over the course of time, you're actually killing the people working with you. Our jobs are actually killing us. The thinking of Milton Friedman, the 1970s economist, has really dominated sort of business theory today. He theorized that the responsibility of business, this is his definition, the responsibility of business is to maximize profit within the bounds of the law, right? What about ethics? You know, like a pharmaceutical company that raises the price on essential drug 200%, 300%, 500%, 800%. It's not illegal. It is unethical, right? It makes us uncomfortable. And yet the law is not broken. That's not a good enough standard to run a business. And it was his thinking that gave rise to the theory of shareholder supremacy,
which was a theory proposed in the late 1970s, where we prioritize the wants, needs, and desires of a shareholder over the needs of the customer or the employee, which is like a coach who's trying to build a great team by doing what the fans want versus what the players need, right? That's basically shareholder supremacy. And as I said, it was just a theory proposed in the late 1970s that was popularized during the boom years of the 80s and 90s. Mass layoffs, where we use the livelihoods of human beings to meet arbitrary projections on an annualized basis at the end of the year, did not exist as a standard business practice prior to the 1980s. Did not exist. It was popularized during the 80s and 90s. The dismantling of Glass-Steagall, which was an act passed after the Great Depression to prevent another Great Depression from happening, and by the way, was extremely effective. Between the dismantling of the Glass-Steagall in the 80s and 90s and the Great Depression, there were a total of 0 stock market crashes. Since the dismantling, all in the name of corporate profit, we've had 3. We had the dot-com boom, Black Monday in 2008. In other words, when we play simply with a finite mindset, we actually do long-term damage to our own system that's supposed to benefit all of us. And I find that upsetting. We've seen the rise of Friedman's thinking, rather. And like I said, his theories dominate business today. And we feel it. Not only have we had those stock market crashes, but anybody who goes to work today, there's a general feeling of unease, especially if you work for a company that embraces annual or even quarterly layoffs to meet arbitrary projections. Keep in mind, a lot of the companies that employ mass layoffs are profitable, just not as profitable as they would like. It's not like they're losing money and they had to do this to save the sinking ship. That's something completely different. These are highly profitable companies that missed a projection, and so they laid people off so they could meet that projection. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. And we know it because we feel it at work. We see this decline of trust. We are not loyal to our companies anymore. Why would we be? They're not loyal to us. And leaders set the tone. So when companies are loyal to us, we will give loyalty back to them. When they're not loyal to us, why would we be loyal to them? I'm tired of CEOs telling me that millennials these days don't stick around very long. Well, why would they if you don't offer them any kind of loyalty back? And it's not for the people to prove to you that they're loyal, it's the other way around. We make time for the things that matter to us.
Yeah.
And of course I have regrets, but regrets is not, I wouldn't use the word regret. Of course there are things that I missed. But I made a choice, and I'm very happy with that choice, and I stand by that choice, because not only have I had the opportunity, the amazing experience to spread this message and see it actually grow and be bigger than me, but I've had the opportunity to live an absolutely surreal life because of it. My life profoundly changed course. And I can't, it's not fair to compare those things. They're not equals. Everybody with straight hair wants curly hair, and everybody with curly wants straight hair.
Brunette wants to be blonde.
I mean, I know people who have the stability in the home life and the families, and look at my life and be like, oh my God, I wish I had that. And you look at my life and I'm bouncing all around, and I mean, the answer is I'm really grateful for the life that I live. So no, regret is not the word that I would use.
But there was a price and a cost.
But there's a price and a cost that I took willingly. There are two currencies in the infinite game: will and resources. Resources is money. You need money to stay in the game, but you need the will of the people as well. And the problem is that when we organize to win, that means the score is more important than the inspiration and motivation that people have to give their blood, sweat, and tears. And when we prioritize resources before will, that's a problem. I've never met a CEO that doesn't believe their people are important. The problem is where on the priority list. You've been to any number of presentations where they put their priorities on the wall. Number 1, growth. Number 2, shareholder value. Number 3, our customer. Number 4, our employees. There it is. See, I do care about our people. And the reality is, as social animals, we want to work for and we're willing to give our blood, sweat, and tears to leaders who understand that the balance of those two essential currencies, the balance of those two things is will has to come before resources. And that doesn't mean 90-10. When I talk about putting people before profit, people freak out, which is ridiculous. You need fuel for the car to go. Money is fuel for the organization, of course. Even if there's a leaning, if it's 51-49, there has to be a slight leaning towards people, because there will always be decisions that a company has to make in which those two cannot both be supplied, and one will have to be sacrificed. The question is, which will you always prioritize? Let me give you a hypothetical example to make my point. Two CEOs. The first CEO says, our number one priority is growth. And of course our people are important, because if we take care of our people, we will meet and exceed our financial goals. Second CEO says, our number one priority is our people. And if we take care of our people, we will always meet and exceed our financial goals. Which one would you rather work for?
I don't want to prioritize.
I mean, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. So this is what it means to prioritize will over resources. It has, of course, money matters, but the people matter more.
Working at a hard job, working for a bad boss, can sometimes be one of the greatest educations ever. So the question is, can you change your mindset? Instead of waking up in the morning going, oh, I can't do this again, but rather view it as university. You're getting a master's degree in leadership, and you might be learning everything how not to do things. And to wake up in the morning and be like, what am I going to learn today? Early on in my career, I had a really bad boss who believed that she could get the most out of us by berating us. And she told me once that I had one of my reviews, and she said, you have no talent. And I was like, nothing? And she was like, nothing. This was her way of, I guess, motivating me. But I had such a good attitude about it for a couple of reasons. One, because I knew what I was up against every day. And instead of taking it personally, I viewed it as my education of how not to lead. And I literally would file this stuff all away and use it someday. I get to use it now. And also, misery loves company. I had a fantastic relationship with my team. We looked after each other because we all had this oppressive boss. We would compare the advice that we got in our little career building sessions, and we took care of each other. And so we had a responsibility to each other, and that's where we cut our teeth on being leaders. And it actually made the job wonderful. Yes, there were days that were oppressive. Yes, there were days that I hated. Yes, there were days I wanted to pull my hair out and just quit. But it's because of the team that I had, and we looked after each other, and the mindset of learning every day that I made the most of it. So I think mindset is a huge part of actually getting some joy out of a difficult job.
This is the practice of empathy. That if we're struggling to communicate to someone, if we're struggling to help someone be at their natural best, I'm tired of people saying to me, how do I get the best out of my people? Really? That's what you want? They're like a towel, you just wring them. How can I get the most out of them? No, how do I help my people be at their natural best? Right? We're not asking these questions. We are not practicing empathy. We have to start by practicing empathy and relate to what they may be going through. And it will profoundly change the decisions we make. It will profoundly change the way we see the world.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Robin Sharma, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Deep down inside, I believe most people on the planet are heartbroken. Why? Because they have betrayed the visions, ambitions, values, mission in their heart.